And bam, MC is in the house. What's going on, folks? Welcome to another live stream, the Warrior Wednesday stream. I'm Justin Garcia, also known as Master Chim. And every single Wednesday at noon, both on the TRIBALNOMICS YouTube page and also the Justin Garcia and Master Chim Facebook pages, I'll be broadcasting this live stream. So you could pick up the show on any one of those. Some watch it on YouTube. Some just run into it through those Facebook channels. Now, I will say that this week, as usual, borderlines on, am I going to get thrown off of social media this week? So I will begin with the reminder that you can go to masterchim.com and sign up for my free email newsletter, the Master Chim letter. And every single morning, I send out an email talking about various topics. I include a quote of the day. I let you know what's going on with me. I keep you updated on events and different video programs and series that I create. But the most important thing is that it is not controlled by any of the social media platforms. So if I ever get tossed, it will be easy to keep in touch with what I'm up to and what I'm where I'm going to go from there. And it's something that I've sort of protected myself against, for some years now. When I first noticed years ago that I was being shadow banned on Facebook, 50K plus followers. And I rarely get an engagement on a post past, 500 people. Whereas, prior to where I consider the shadow banning having started, I was getting, I'd share a meme and it'd be shared, 1,000 times within a day. So something is up with that. So masterchim.com, go there. Now, if there are any questions that you guys have, feel free to write them in the comments. And, while you guys are watching, I know some of you guys are watching on YouTube, some on Facebook. Do me a favor and just like the live stream. Comment if you can, just to make sure that I am connected to all of those. There was a problem initially when I started using this service. I used this StreamYard service, and the first time I did it, I wasn't getting my feed on the Justin Garcia Facebook page to be public until after, and I had to do that manually. I think I remedied that. But Corey, what's going on, my man? Good to see you. Corey becoming something of a regular on these Wednesday shows, and I appreciate you hanging out. So today we're going to be going over Matt Walsh's What is a Woman documentary. Now, Aaron, what's up, darling? Up in Canada. Good to see you. This documentary is, a couple things. I wrote some notes, so if I'm looking down, it's just there were a couple of things I definitely wanted to make sure I touched on. But, I guess starting out from the beginning, it's definitely worth a watch, So Daily Wire, I begrudgingly got a membership to in order to watch this documentary. And I got to say, I'm not disappointed, and if you think about it, and it's going to sound like I'm shilling for the Daily Wire, and maybe, in a way that I am, but I don't, there's no fucking affiliate code or like, I'm not getting anything from telling people to sign up for Daily Wire. But what I will offer you guys as viewers is, how many of the things do we pay for where we know the creators of the content and or service that we're a member of wants to do away with society as we know it? Will absolutely send society into the shitter just to increase a rung on their personal ladder of power. We know it, and we still give these people our money. And what I would offer is, my experience so far with the Daily Wire is one of pleasant surprise, right? So it started with this documentary, and because I had the membership, I started, snooping around, looking at other things on the site, and it was pretty good. It's pretty good so far. They've got some stuff that's worth, watching. I read an article, I think it was yesterday, on a bunch of hockey players down in Florida, Tampa Bay hockey. I don't follow hockey, but a bunch of players who refused to wear the gay month, logo on their stuff. and whole article about it. Interesting stuff. Nice to hear about that people are pushing back against the agenda, but you're not reading about that on normal news sources. You know, what's up, Jamie? Good documentary. Good. I'm glad you saw it, Stephanie. That documentary made me want to pull my kids out of public school. Stephanie, you've been following me for a couple of years now. You're telling me that I have not been able to do it, yet this documentary is going to be the thing that pushes you over the edge. You know, come join the dark side. That's all I'll say. You know, my kids, obviously, I homeschool my kids. I've written a book on homeschooling over a decade ago. I told my mother I was going to homeschool my children on the day of my high school graduation. So I was tracking these things very, very early on as a kid that grew up in New York City and I went to Bronx High School of Science at the time, one of the best public high schools in the country. Then, transferred up out of New York City for my sophomore year, the end of my sophomore year, beginning of my junior year. And I got to see what like a small town, high school was like. Then came back and spent, about a year and a half high school at Evander Childs High School in the Bronx. Which I believe is the first high school in New York City to ever have metal detectors. So it was sort of down the evolutionary ladder when it came to, just the level of high schools that I was exposed to. And at the tail end of that entire thing, I said, I'm never going to put one of my children through this shit. But I will say that, sure, watching something like this documentary just lends itself even more to the push that we should all have to reclaim what our children are being raised to become and what they are being exposed to, during their childhoods. So my man Ryan in the house, what up? Patrick, some real ghouls in that documentary. Absolutely. And it's a great word. It's a great word. Stephanie says me too. I will accept that. Mike Davis says, I haven't seen the full documentary, but a lot of the sections he released on his YouTube. He does a good job of being as calm, as patient as he can with these people. Well, first off, what's up, Mike? And I will say that is a perfect segue into exactly where I wanted to start with this. So Matt Walsh, I am vaguely, or before this, I was vaguely familiar with as the guy who is very good at the deadpan delivery. The straight face, I'm going to ask a question that everybody wants to start either losing their shit or hysterically laughing at, but I'm going to keep a straight face the entire time. He's that guy, and he's good. I was first exposed to him via, and this was actually profiled in the documentary, he was on Dr. Phil. Not that I watched Dr. Phil, but this scene was out there, and it was somewhat viral when it came out, and it came across my recommended list on some social media platform, and I watched it, and I was impressed with the way he handled himself on the Dr. Phil show with these the trannies and the guy with the girl with the beard. And, it was the whole fucking circus was there, and he was there, and he more than held his own. And I think he did really, really well. So starting off with Matt Walsh, he has the temperament for this type of work. I will readily admit I don't have the temperament to do the work that he did in this documentary. Because I'm just built differently than he is. And it is really a sentiment of gratitude that guys like him do have this temperament, because it's good work that he's doing. Right. So just starting off, with Matt Walsh, I think he did a great job, and he was the perfect messenger for this type of, product of this documentary. So the documentary itself, it's under the Daily Wire banner, their, I guess, production. I don't know the lingo, their production entity, and very well done, very well done. It's now commonplace that more and more people are having access to the ability to produce things at a high level. Here I am, like all these things that I'm doing right now, I have hardly any idea how any of this shit works, but that's how dumbed down being really, really effective online in terms of production level can be. Get a bunch of people who actually know what they're doing, who have some zest, some energy for the mission that they're on, and you see what's happening with the Daily Wire. And this documentary is a testament to that, because I was very impressed with just the, I don't want to keep using the same phrase, but it was just so well done. It's like, oh, this is like a real documentary done by real people who know what they're doing. Whatever that means, I think you kind of understand the sentiment. And I would definitely say that about this. So right from the opening of the documentary, and I'm not going to go through a play-by-play, but just touch on a couple of things of the framework, and then maybe answer some questions and give some of my opinions on the subject matter itself. But it opens with this sort of 1950s style sex ed, home economics sort of montage. And it's like old clips that they must have, got from, public school in 1952 in Wisconsin, like who knows, but very the sort of Americana-ish vibe to it. And you could just see right off the bat, what it is. And you're like, yep, we're not anywhere near that point anymore. And so it starts off with just a great contrast of introducing where we are not in society right from the opening credits. So as it goes on, the basic premise, as I understood this documentary to be on, although he does have the "What is a Woman" title, and that seemed to have been, hearing him talk about the documentary on other videos, seemed to have be the impetus for this entire thing. And I think it actually even came from that Dr. Phil appearance. It started off with that, but then eventually, you got to build a documentary about that. And you could start with that, let's ask people, what is a woman? But what we're really doing is we're using that as sort of like the tool or the catalyst to expose this entire world that I think a lot of us know exists, but exists just under enough of a facade of normality that that we're willing to just deal with it and coexist with these things. And it really turned into something of an expose, I would say, on what exactly is happening with the transgender movement in this country. Some Canadians are represented also, but what is happening and how it's affecting children, and what I have in TRIBALNOMICS, the RPS formula of how a tribe is successful, and the P is the procreation, and that aspect of the transgender movement. How are they creating future allies in this movement? Well, they got to get their hands on the kids, and pun intended. And you see in this documentary just how devious, ghoulish, to use a word that somebody had used before, these people actually are. And we're not talking about just the crazy, lunatic, narcissistic, mother who wants to be popular so badly she's willing to convince her 3-year-old son that he's a girl. Those people are represented in the documentary also. But what you actually see are people who are doctors, people who have access to medicine, the ability to prescribe these medicines, the ability to perform surgeries on young adults and children. When you have this level of sort of systemic infiltration, it could coexist as a sort of just subculture to a very high level of efficacy. And that's exactly what's happening in this transgender, ideology-driven business. There's a lot of money to be made. There's a lot of ideologies, I would say, contend a lot of anti-American ideologies that fit seamlessly in this, in this transgender, quest that so many of these people find themselves on. And Matt Walsh does an incredible job, and the producers of the documentary do an incredible job of exposing enough of these people, where at the end of it, it's like, okay, we could still be okay with labeling these people as being crazy, but these people are crazy with mainstream permissions. These people are doctors, surgeons, people who are, one of the things that I saw in the as an example is one of the therapists was saying that there was a time where the majority of her clients, and she's a therapist for troubled teens, a lot of them were uh, having, gender issues, or maybe she specializes in these gender issues. And the majority of them were, gender identity disorder, just the, dare I say, typical, nothing seems right to me. I hate my body, therefore I must be of a different body because this body clearly isn't me. And this hatred that they develop for their physical body is very much, a standard, symptom of people suffering from this. And she said there was a time where that pretty much was her therapy. Whereas now it's really, you are going to have this discovery about yourself. And this is the narrative and the story that is supported by the, by the machine, the medical machine. You're going to have this discovery about yourself. And then you are going to begin a process of medical affirmation. It's going to be hormones, and it's going to be surgery eventually. And then, everybody lives happily after, I guess. Right. So there are people, she's saying this as a therapist, that is what she is observing now. And it's one of those things that if this was a one-off interview, you could say, with a sort of skeptic, eye, like, well, yeah, but what does she know? Maybe she's just missing. Maybe she doesn't have the success she used to because there's better options and she's just angry. Like, there's a lot of different ways to go, in different directions with how you can interpret the value of what this particular therapist is saying. But when you include that in the context of all the medical professionals who are also supporting that story, it's like, holy shit, this is what's happening to our children. This is what's happening to our children. Two people that historically in the documentary are Adam Kinsey and John Money. And I've known about Kinsey and Money prior to this documentary, but on Matt Walsh and the producers of this documentary, that they decided to include these two completely destructive, deviant pieces of shit in their documentary. Kinsey is a guy that, he wanted to throw society on its head when it came to any sort of sexual morality through the, I'm going to say normal Americanized lens. The Judeo-Christian filter, you could put that label on it if you want. But pretty much what we consider to be normal, the normal relationship society had with sexuality, he wanted to throw that upside down, going so far as to sexualizing children and being the person who really touted the sexual identities present in babies, and had a bunch of studies that did some just incredibly fucking heinous things to babies, recording orgasms of babies, whatever the fuck that means. And watch the documentary, you'll see a lot more of the information. Money, on the other hand, John Money was the gender identity, the godfather of the gender identity nonsense, where there was suddenly this separation of somebody's sex and the way society treated that sex, i.e. your gender. I made a meme, I think a week ago, just pointing out the logic of it. It's if gender is separate, it's separate only in that it is the effect of the cause, and the cause being the sex of the individual. We cannot separate the two of them. Well, that's not what Money thought. Money had this one experiment he did on the Reimer twins. And again, I've been exposed to this prior to the documentary, but great profile of their case. And basically it was these twin boys where in a circumcision procedure, one of the boys basically had his penis burned off, and parents not knowing what to do, were basically sold on the idea from, by John Money, that they could opt to raise this young boy as a girl, and thought that, we could change the gender identity of an individual just by, a process of nurturing the desired identity, right? The desired gender. And said it was a success, but it turned out to be an abject failure. Eventually, the boy who was raised as a girl um, reverted back to being a boy, and just a very tragic story of abuse that culminated in one of the brothers overdosing in drugs, and the brother who was actually, misgendered. Ironically, the true type of misgendering, he wound up killing himself later on in life. Um, and money was never held accountable for this, So there are some heroes of this movement that are as devious and as just, if there is an evil stamp that you want to put on somebody's forehead, reserve 2 stamps for these fucking guys. Back to the documentary. One of the things that was exposed by Matt Walsh was, when he identified the term circular definitions. The basic, the premise of the entire identity of the documentary, the question, what is a woman? When somebody answers, well, it's whatever, it's whoever identifies as a woman, or it's what a woman identifies as, or it's whatever, like you can't use the term to define itself. And that circular definition seems to be the creed, of all these people that are over there in that world of the, transgender, whatever the fuck. I got to think of like better names than the ones that are there, because it really, they should be mocked at every opportunity, and it should begin with the labeling of it. But basically, it's a bunch of people who know their arguments can't stand any stringent process of logic and scrutiny. So what they do is they deflect, they project, they reject, they do all these different things aside from actually expose themselves to the possibility that they're wrong, because they know they're wrong, but there's such an emotional attachment, maybe some financial attachment, but to a lot of the useful idiots of this movement, it's an emotional attachment that they're starting with the end game, and they're just sort of reversing the process of logic from there. And if you start from the beginning, at some point, they're going to jump off when you start going down that path where they would have to admit that they're wrong, or worse, right? So a very common element to this, which I think at this point people are familiar enough with the topic to understand, is that sexualizing children is at the center of what this is. Sexualizing, like we grew up and there were tomboys, right? And these were young girls who just enjoyed being a little bit less feminine, a little bit more masculine. But we called them tomboys. We didn't call them boys that were stuck in girls' bodies. There wasn't anything other than okay, this girl's a little rough around the edges. And on the opposite side of that, we had, effeminate boys, boys who enjoyed playing with dolls and these things. We never said, we never took that leap of logic to suggest that they were actually girls trapped in boys' bodies. That would be kind of ridiculous. And if anybody would share that sentiment back then, it would be understood to be metaphorical, right? But now that is actually the case. Now we know, and there's studies to back this up, that a lot of aggressive masculine type women, a lot of them become lesbians. They wind up, just swinging that way, and vice versa for the boys. And that's something that we've all, sort of come to grips with as sort of just it's one of these things that we're not going to really change in society. At least that's my position. And I think collectively that most sane-minded people agree to that. Not speaking on its morality and all this other stuff. That's a different conversation. But I will say, those aren't the people we're talking about right now. We're talking about the people who think it's okay to say that, yeah, my 3-year-old boy says he's a girl and I believe him. And of course, and this is again profiled in the documentary, where does this lead? When we throw out the feedback loop of reality, the accountability of having some logic and fact-based, proof of your positions, when we throw that out, what do we have now? We have kids that are identifying as animals, right? There was a grown fucking man in the documentary who claims he is a wolf. Now, the funny thing was he got a little snarky with Matt Walsh, where Matt Walsh was asking him, and his, such a deadpan, just great delivery. He, he asked the guy, so can you have a conversation with the wolf? And the funny thing is that the wolf guy was almost like I can't talk to a wolf, you idiot. Like paraphrasing, but basically, he's like, like, don't be ridiculous. Like, how the fuck am I going to talk to a wolf? Oh, I don't know. You kind of said you are one. So at what point, like, I didn't get the, dungeon master, what are the rules here? Like, that's the fucking sense you get when these people are talking, because they will have a position that is so logic based that they almost get offended that you think they would have a position otherwise, but it would be right next to a position that is so fucking retarded. It's like, how do these two people exist in your head? Oh, one of them's a wolf. I forgot. Right. So sexualizing children, having these circular definitions is just, it's par for the course with these people. And it's just lacking accountability. One of the things about, Matt Walsh that he does so well in this documentary is he really stays, just deadpan. He's really just asking questions. There was a politician, I think I don't know if he was from Hawaii. Maybe he looks Hawaiian. Maybe he's from San Francisco. Whoever the guy was, I don't know. But Asian, a politician who basically was being led slowly into, sticking his foot in his mouth by Walsh when it came to, these equality bills that, and I think he had written one, that's politician, or at least was in support of one, that, giving trans athletes the equal rights to, to other athletes and all these. It's like, but what Matt Walsh was doing was using his position to really get him to comment on grown men dressing like women and going into, women's bathrooms. There was one case where a woman, a transgender woman, right, a man dressed like a woman, was in a woman's bathroom, and the women there were losing their shit. That this guy was in there walking around, swinging in the wind, acting like everything's all good. And it comes they come to find out that the guy isn't actually, like, he is a convicted sex predator. You couldn't write it any better. And as Matt Walsh was leading him to that, the guy at some point was like, oh shit, like, it's like, that they have that frog and the pot, the pot of boiling water, metaphor. Like, well, this frog noticed the bubbles and was like, oh hell no, I'm getting the fuck out of here. And even like his handler was like, yeah, we're done here, we're done, basically go fuck yourself. And Matt Walsh was just, I just wanted to ask a couple of questions, and that's what he was doing. And the venom, the energy, the animosity that was coming out from the people he was talking to is just so indicative of people who know they're full of shit and are just not used to being called on it. So again, a great job by him. There was one guy that said, and this was profiled in some of the promo material for the documentary, that invoking the truth is rude and condescending, because Matt Walsh had said that he was trying to get to the truth. So a couple of other things of note, a 14-year-old osteoporosis wound up being, developing osteoporosis because she was going through hormone treatment to, I guess, prevent the onset of puberty. And she was eventually diagnosed with osteoporosis as a result. One thing in the documentary they do a good job of is debunking this notion that puberty is something that we now have the ability to just medically pause until we want it to start again, like pausing a movie. I actually think that was like the analogy that one of the loony doctors made in the documentary. When it turns out it couldn't be further from the truth. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. They're experimenting on these kids. Sure, a lot of kids will suffer incredible, damaging side effects. A lot of kids will wind up killing themselves. A lot of kids will have their lives ruined, but eventually doctors will figure out a better way to do it, and that's what this generation of kids is basically being. That's their use for the medical field. They're going to make a bunch of money, and they're going to tighten up their protocols, and they don't care how many kids' lives they ruin in the process. Which seems to be a pretty normal mission for any pharmaceutical identity to begin with. Who gives a fuck, what it does, how do we sell more, and how do we convince them that they still need it, right? So Canadian dad. This was an interesting part of the documentary. Though there was a dad there who maintained his anonymity. It was on the phone that he was talking to Matt. He actually couldn't leave Canada because he was awaiting trial. He was arrested because of a Canadian law that criminalizes misgendering somebody. And who did he misgender? His own 13-year-old daughter. Now, obviously, the guy's divorced, and obviously his ex-wife is a fucking Looney Tunes because suddenly the daughter is a boy and wants to go through this therapy. The dad basically showed up and was like, nobody's fucking doing this to my daughter. The medical facility agreed to wait until this was resolved. Basically, legally, the mother got permission to do the thing because the daughter herself doesn't need permission, parental consent to begin transitioning, as if it's such a great fucking marketing team this transgender movement has. Transitioning. There's no transitioning. There's mutating. Before they begin mutating, they don't need parental consent. And because this dad referred to his daughter as a she after she had begun mutating, he was arrested. And Jamie said that was up here in BC in British Columbia. Yeah, fucking batshit crazy, batshit fucking crazy. But it is, he's actually awaiting trial now, arrested in jail and was out on bail and awaiting trial because he referred to his daughter as a she. There's got to be a point where more and more people just realized how fucking ridiculous this is. What else? Jordan Peterson, right? Who I touted as the most miserable man on the internet, actually is in his wheelhouse here. His appearance towards the latter part of the documentary, I think, was well designed. It came off as being authentic and authoritative. This is what Jordan Peterson, really, really thrives doing. Talking about topics like this, the aspect of what the therapist's role is and what is actually going on in these kids' minds and how these therapists are undermining their training and their oath to protect these people, how that's basically being tossed by the wayside. And Jordan Peterson does a great job of articulating what exactly that is, what these expectations are. He gets into some of the subtleties of what a therapist is supposed to be doing, what the role is, and where they deviate in this transgender movement and these people that are looking to affirm the process of mutation. So Jordan Peterson was he's somebody that, listen, when he's not in his wheelhouse, I'm the first guy, like, not a fan. But when he is where he belongs, like, you're not going to find anybody better, and he was perfectly cast in the role of therapist we trust, in the documentary. So, okay, what else? I think I went over just about everything in terms of my notes. At the end of the documentary, Matt Walsh, in that sort of conclusion portion of the documentary where he's now just reflecting on everything that had gone through, he has his family there, and he asks his wife, what is a woman, and she answers succinctly, and what she says, just watch the documentary. I'm not trying to give away too much, but it was all in all just a pretty solid hour and a half, and one of the things I didn't touch on, as a matter of fact, Anabolic Ascension, I see your comment. At one point, he flew to Africa and was with the Maasai tribe and was putting these questions of, do you think a man could be a woman? Or not even, but what do you think a woman is? And, what if the woman has a penis? And and you could just see the complete just shock in these people's faces. Now, I will say, whereas, listen, good on them that they had the budget to fucking fly to Africa. I don't think it added much to the fabric of the documentary. It was something of a reprieve from the just one crazy doctor after another. I guess it changed the tempo. So maybe there was a little bit more of an artistic design there in having him go to Africa and talk to these people. It wasn't, I didn't mind it, but I will say when you compare that with the exposure of John Money and Kinsey and some of these doctors, these real doctors that are working and mutating children, like it was more of a relief from the tone of those other topics and guests, so it worked, but it wasn't something that I was like, oh man, I'm so glad he went to Africa and asked these people. All right, so all in all, yeah, that's my review. I definitely think you should watch it. It is something that I'm having my children watch, including my 7-year-old daughter. And the reason that is I'm somebody who I've said before, I've always exposed my children to violence. I want them to understand that violence is a part of life, and it's something that, regardless of any moral code of any society, successful society throughout history, violence has always been present, and it's something that they need to build a relationship with, not advocate for, not seek or look to create, like just to have a functional relationship with it. Because you see how many people in society today have such an aversion to violence that it actually informs what they think society should resemble. And they're basically, their fears are doing the talking. I never wanted my children to do that. However, one of the things I've always contended that we need to keep away from children is sexualization, sexuality. Now, I will say, whereas I'm certainly not conceding the battle of society to these fucking deviants, I will also say that it is popping up so commonly in children's content. These messages and these just devious fucking like influential brainwashing strategies are just playing themselves out, and how these children's shows are being designed, that I need to arm my children, even my 7-year-old daughter, with a position, lest she be pulled astray by some other identity that she trusts and that, because of the ignorance of her parents, approve of. Case in point, in the new Buzz Lightyear movie, there's going to be a lesbian kiss. Like, this is the Toy Story franchise, and they're putting this topic into the Toy Story franchise. Now, I understand the people who, because and I don't care if you're friends with me, so people who are so fucking retarded to respond to that by going, yeah, well, listen, if they're going to see gays outside, there's nothing wrong with being gay. You said that there's nothing being like, listen, this doesn't belong in a fucking kids movie. Well, why wouldn't it be in a kids movie? It's in society, and they shouldn't hate gay people. They should be indifferent to all of it until they have enough of a reference of morality to draw some context against the things that they're exposed to as they, begin engaging with society on a larger scale. This doesn't need to be in a fucking kids movie. Are they saying it's going to be in a kids movie? Are they saying no? It's some, somebody sees it and leaks it, and then it's a big thing. And if it wasn't for that, how many people would wind up, sending their kids or taking their kids to go and see this movie, and then they see two girls kissing and are like, what the fuck? Do they have the character to stand up at that point and leave and get their money back? Or are they going to say, oh, well, I just, he still wants to see the movie. It's just that I just told him to ignore that part. It's like, these are the concessions that allow these people to build the momentum that's destroying our society. It's like, fucking stand for something, people. So, what do I suggest? I suggest you do allow your children to understand just how fucking crazy and dysfunctional these people are at the back of this. As far as gays, homosexuality is concerned, I'm not a Christian. I'm not, my positions aren't, informed by, any sort of dogmatic relationship with a religion, be it Christianity or anything else. But I understand the value and function of what society is and what it is slowly becoming. And when you say that we could have gay month and we could have, the gay parades, which are just these deviant displays of hypersexuality and dysfunction and deviance, we can't say that because these things are arguably protected by the First Amendment, that it is going to lend itself to supporting the fabric of the society we enjoy. There are a lot of people who come here from other countries, from other cultures, and because of what they're used to, and maybe because they don't have the vision, the scope and scale of a perspective to see why this is bad, but they come here and they want to act here the way they acted there, without ever making the connection that, hey, here isn't like there, because here nobody acts like they do there. So maybe when you come here, you should act like the people here, because that is how here got created. Well, there's something to be said for, listen, gay bashing, beating up gay people, there's no place for that. It's weak. Best advice I ever got, dealing with homosexuals was from my dad. And I remember I came home one day and I was pissed off. I was pissed off because some gay dude hit on me. And he more than hit on me. He basically, I'm not going to repeat it here, but let's just say that I was walking home from a White Plains Road in the Bronx down to Boyd Avenue where I grew up. And on my way there, a car, it wasn't a cop, a car, maybe, who knows, a car pulled over. And I'm not going to say what the guy said, but I'll just draw the scenario. Asked me if I knew where he could do something. and I sat there in shock, and I was like what? And and then he went into more graphic detail. And I ran at the car before he drove off. And who knows? I was about 15, 16 years old. Who knows what I would have done to this fucking guy if I got my hands on him? Not what he wanted, I guarantee it. But I wound up getting home and I'm pissed off. I'm like, I don't have a relationship with this. I'm just angry. I'm like, I have to beat the shit out of that guy. And my father is there. And he's like, what's going on? And I'm like, oh, this fucking, the word I used, right? Then I told him what happened. And he laughed and he goes, listen, let me give you some advice. And best advice I ever got. And I've been giving this advice ever since he gave it to me. He said, treat gay men like ugly women. Thanks, but no thanks. And it was perfect. And as soon as he said that, it's like, all right, that makes sense. That makes sense. And there have been plenty of instances as the years gone by where it's like, yeah, I'm good, man. Yeah, no, run along. But sage advice, so point being, I don't have this anti-gay, code. Like, no, but I do understand that in society, remember when we used the phrase like, what happens in the privacy of people's bedroom, or in the privacy of your bedroom, or in the privacy of one's own home. Like, we have that phrase in this relationship with this idea that people can do things when they're by themselves as much as they want, but don't involve us in that shit. That's been a very general sentiment that's gone on, who knows how long, certainly probably longer than America has been around. But the idea of it is we all agree to coexist here, to use a little bit of the tribalnomics lingo. We have the overlap and offset, and we're referring to the compatibility of people to each other and people to the collective of the society. Overlap and offset is a great sort of way to sort of assess, this, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? And I think when we understand that there are some behaviors that are deviant statistically, remember, deviant is a statistical assessment. Any connotation that's added to it, I don't need to use that. I'm just speaking in terms of the people who, when you look at the normal curve, that are on the ends that represent very, very, irregular, unusual behaviors and preferences. These people, these deviants, are welcome members of society so long as they cannot obstruct the fabric of society while pursuing their identities and the preferences that are attached to it, the deviant preferences that are attached to it. It's like, listen, all right, you and your boyfriend, you can do whatever the fuck you want. All right, show up to the ER, the doctors, they'll have to get the gerbil out, like no questions asked. It's like, okay, yeah, it's a gerbil. We're gonna get that gerbil out of there, and then we're gonna send you home. Probably give you some antibiotics and call it a night. And all right, don't ask, don't tell. Fuck, get the fuck out of here. It is what you make of it. But somehow, this has become we are being unfair or immoral if we don't treat everybody as if they're normal, which, like, logically is an impossibility. There is no, we're all normal. There is normal, right? The Overton window is a great concept that describes how that sort of sliding scale of what's politically accepted is so influenced by what it is we collectively treat as being normal. But there's a certain point where it will become normal to be dysfunctional, because just because it's normal doesn't make it functional, which means the functional fabric of our society, or the functional aspect of our society, has a finite amount of wiggle room, and when we sort of take that over the window and we slide it too far one way or the other, there's no reason to expect that same level of function to continue, and there are people out there who, there's, and listen, I don't shit on people who don't have children, commenting on aspects of society that affect children, but I will make notice of all the people who don't have children, who you could tell have no interest in having children, have a lot to say about what type of world we're leaving for our children, and that's something that I take issue with, so let me get to some of these questions. Oh man, I know somebody messaged me one, and I'm using this remarkable digital notepad, and I'm always fucking up what I'm hitting. I'm always winding up on the wrong pages. So let me see if I can't find this. I'm not going to waste too much time. So let me go here. I apologize to the people who sent me messages with the questions. I will definitely address them on the next one. If you're watching this and you sent me one of those, do me a favor and send it again here so I can see it. All right. So let's get down to these comments. Jamie says, hey, our prime minister has a vagina. Sorry, but it's true. You'll get no argument from me. My man, Justin Trudeau up there, just fucking up at a level of fucking up the world has never seen. All right. What's up, Big John Wiley? Good to see you, brother. Jamie says, yeah, these therapists counsel like the cop who asked, was he a black man interview? It's terrible. Absolutely. Surgeries from Aaron. Surgeries are hormones. Oh, let me do this. I could do this thing. Yeah, there you go. I forgot. I'm paying for the fancy pants level of this service. Let me press these buttons. So Aaron says, surgeries or hormones should be out of the question until the kid is legally an adult and able to make the decision themselves and foot the bill. And it is ridiculous. I run out of adjectives when we're just describing how ridiculous it actually is that this is something that is controversial nowadays. It's like, well, wait, what? Like, we're letting your 4-year-old told you what? That he's a girl? And you're what? You're bringing him to the doctor to get him hormones? Like, you're what? Yet here we are. And that is the voice of reason right there. And I absolutely agree. Aljitsu says, my wife wanted to snatch the lady with the green hair through the screen. Oh, man, that lady was fucking tough to stomach, man. That lady was tough to stomach. He's referring to one of the, I think she was a fucking doctor who was in the documentary. You guys really should watch it. You really, really should watch it. All right, Corey says, I have a 7-year-old girl too. Right on. Absolutely. Corey says, the message used to be subliminal, but they're just blatant in your face now. And here's the thing. Why do people use formulas over and over again? The easy answer is because they work. And when they stop working, they stop using those formulas. Well, there was a time where they had to be subliminal because of the consequence. Well, they've managed to castrate, again, pun intended, anybody who is in position of influence in politics, the legislative capabilities and whatnot, into basically, you do what we say or we'll ruin your life. I mean, literally an hour ago, prior to me doing this live stream, I just saw a report on online of an armed man looking for Judge Kavanaugh's house, like was picked up by, I don't know if it was the police or the FBI. And, you think an armed man, like, all right, I got guns. What's the big deal? Well, my man was in I think it was Maryland, looking for Kavanaugh's house. When they picked him up, he was like, yeah, I was going to see Kavanaugh to talk to him about this abortion reversal and gun control and shit like that. Fucking, Looney Tunes the guy is, but this is what they can get away with, right? This is what they'll get away with. And you see the inconsistencies and how, now the Department of Justice is treating people on the left versus how everybody was treated when they were on the right, and it's inconsistency. But, the need for subliminal messaging is not as high as it was then. And I will say, so, to give you a take on how to track this moving forward, understand that there is always something overt. There is always something covert or subliminal. So if that is out in the open right now, what are they doing subliminally that will pay dividends for them as time goes on, right? You reap what you sow. They're always reaping and they're always sowing. So think about it, because that's where you start to connect the dots and see the trajectory of what these people's plans look like. It's not about, because remember when a lot of people, talked about gay marriage, and it's, a lot of people against gay marriage go, they want this, and then it's going to be this, and then it's going to be this. And it's like, here we are. When it came to the lockdowns, right? Fuck lockdowns, fuck this, because, you give them 2 weeks, they take 2 years, right? Remember, it was flatten the curve, 2 weeks. It's like you give them a little bit, and they are going to run with it. That's what happens. In fighting, like, listen, if I could get you on your heel, like, I could fucking run you over like a truck. And when you're put on your heels by these people, because what they do is they try to tug on your heartstrings. They try to tell you that, you're immoral or you're mean. They put, dead children on the video. They put crying parents on the video, and then you get all emotional. And then they go, do you want this to be the reality? Because if you do, you disagree with us. If you don't want it to be like this, you'll agree with whatever we say we should do. Oh, I agree. Whatever it is, I agree, because I don't want to support. Like, this is how people are led. And it's really because of their weakness, because of the fragility they have, not only with their own identities, but their role of what, they should be doing in society and what society should be striving for at large. All right. What else? Let me get here. All right. Seven Sons. Should we show children war footage of soldiers having their limbs blown off? Okay. And I think you're being funny here, but I would say, I don't know. Depends on your children. Depends on your children. You got to understand, there is, my motto is pressure to power. And I will use a weightlifting analogy. Building strength in a weight room is having a relationship with the resistance that you are using in the gym, be a sort of progressive overload. Add a little bit, work with it, get a little bit stronger, add a little bit more. I've squatted over 600 pounds before. When I first started squatting when I was 13 years old, if I had put 600 pounds in the bar, I might have killed myself. I wasn't strong enough there at that point to do that weight. But I endeavored to become stronger to the point where I was eventually capable of handling that. So the question, should we show children war footage of soldiers having their limbs blown off? Well, I don't know. Think about the children who are in war zones right now, who Tuesday, everything was normal. Wednesday, there are people who are having their limbs blown off. There's an argument where, these kids that are being traumatized because what they're seeing is so far beyond what they're capable of handling that they're being made useless. in a situation like that, yeah, there is an argument for getting children strong enough to where they could see war footage of soldiers having their limbs blown off and not be traumatized to the point of dysfunction. So that's my take on that. Aaron says, do you know if there's a way to buy a hard copy DVD of it? Because I have a Daily Wire membership, but our girl is only going to see it in a few years, and I don't want to forget about it before then when I don't have one anymore. Now, I will say I don't know if there is a way to buy the DVD. Absolutely. But I think that, hey, you bought the Daily Wire membership. If you wanted to get creative on how to make sure you kept that thing alive, on your computer, I'm sure you could figure it out. Not that I advocate for that, because, like pirating stuff is illegal. Who the fuck wants to be a pirate? But you get the drift. But I don't know. I don't know right offhand. Corey, I haven't read this. Let's see what he says here. Children are susceptible to violence and more vulnerable than adults. While showing them more footage may not make sense, there are always ways to teach them so they can be more self-aware. And absolutely, I think that is very much congruent with what I had described. There's a process. Understand the fact that we have a yes/no position on any of these things just speaks to how I would say spoiled we are. In our society, where what a lot of people say is, well, obviously we do this, or obviously we wouldn't do that. What's informing that position is really what is normal to them. The process and then decision that society's already made where that's concerned. It informs people's morality, without any process. Not a bad thing. You got to have a commonality that people sort of connect to become functionally, aligned together. But when shit starts going crazy, you want to be able to have a process that does not rely on the disconnected individuals, the strangers telling you, what to believe and what is moral. All right. John Romanos. What's up, John? He says, hey, MC, please read The Overhauling of Straight America. It's the LGBT Manifesto. I will check it out. What's up, Lucky? Lucky says, if I had an 18-year-old daughter wanting to visit Morocco or some other exotic location, you sure as shit I'd show her what happened to those backpackers there. Absolutely. And if you guys do not know what's happened to those beautiful blonde-haired, blue-eyed backpackers in Morocco, you should go and research that. I doubt you'll find it on Google, so you may have to go to other search engines to find that video. But that is certainly a lesson in morality, as history likes to teach it. My whole thing with human rights is the rights you have. Your human rights are the ones you have in the woods when confronting a hungry bear. I could also say the rights you have as a human are being a blonde-haired, blue-eyed young lady in Morocco with a bunch of crazy jihadist psychopaths. Then we get to see, what the world thinks about your morality. But right on. If I had an 18-year-old daughter wanting to visit Morocco, I tell her no. Like, yep, not gonna do it. Ain't going. Sorry. And if she said she was still going to go, I go on social media and tell everybody that she's a racist. That way she'd be on the no-fly list. Right on. All right, guys. All right, I've gone an hour. It's been a very, very enjoyable show. I will tell you, not only every Wednesday am I here, and I want you guys to make sure you join me and share this video with the people that would enjoy it. But also, if you are not on my mailing list, go to masterchim.com and put your email in there. I don't sell emails. I don't spam emails. I send you every day a free email newsletter that has some topics that I cover, things like I talk about here. I have a quote of the day. The quotes are all my quotes that I put there. There's a quote of the day, and then I'm usually talking about either a shirt that I'm selling or what's going on with my book. TRIBALNOMICS is the book. All the relevant links and everything are down in the description, so you could check that out. But I appreciate you guys. John Romano says children experiencing war have no choice. I would never show a child any sort of raw violent material, but I would definitely discuss violence with a child in an educational context. And I would just add to that, John, that exposing them to any raw violent material could be or could have an educational context if built up to it, and if you deem it just necessary. I remember my nephew, enlisted as an infantryman in the Army a few years back, and it's one of those things where I know he was raised to be hard. He was raised to be, to have a relationship with violence, and that really was good to know when my nephew, I love, was getting ready to potentially go to war, to fight in the Army. So there is a place even for that. But I appreciate that comment. Derek, come by for a seminar soon. Hey, listen, you want me to come by for a seminar? You let me know. I'd be more than happy to do it. Good to see you though, Derek. Referencing war zones, this is from Corey. Referencing war zones to children who live in the West just isn't relatable to young children. And again, it's there's a process, and we want to have the process be functional and not only functional, but also to a degree prioritized. What's in the here and now, and all that being, I'll keep going. All right, I appreciate you guys. I'll see you guys next time. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to power.